Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the defining moments and the deeply human experiences of the American Revolution. If you've been following the 8th grade U.S. history scope, this is that critical moment where we pivot from colonial settlement straight into the intense, messy conflicts that actually forged a new nation. But we're not just going to sit here and memorize dates today. Instead, we're going to act like real historians, digging into the actual evidence left behind to understand how this conflict was truly fought and lived. Before we get into the specific battles and documents, though, we really need to ask ourselves a crucial question about how history actually changes. Think about it for a second. What makes an event a true turning point in history? Is it always some massive, bloody battle? Does a turning point mean everything just changes overnight? Keep those questions in the back of your mind as we work through today's investigation.
Here's our roadmap for today. We've got defining the revolution, a timeline of turning points, sourcing historical evidence, comparing wartime experiences, 2 knowledge checks, and finally, a review and final question. Section 1. Defining the revolution. We've got 2 clear learning targets for this explainer. First, we're going to explain how a turning point can actually change a conflict. Second, we'll compare how evidence reveals completely different wartime experiences. We'll be relying on primary source frameworks from the National Archives and the C3 framework to make sure we're getting this exactly right.
Section 2. Timeline of turning points. The thing you have to realize is that there wasn't just one single decisive turning point in the Revolutionary War. It was more like a chain reaction of critical shifts. Look at how this progresses. In 1775, the first shots changed the strategy to active conflict. Then, 1776 shifted the political purpose to full independence. By 1777, the victory at Saratoga secured crucial alliances, which directly led to the 1778 French Treaty, bringing in desperate foreign resources. Moving to 1781, Yorktown combined resources and strategy to finally corner the British. And all of that built up to the ultimate political purpose in 1783, an independent nation recognized by the Treaty of Paris.
But hold on, we need to clear up a major misconception right away. A turning point does absolutely not mean the war ended immediately. Just look at the gap here. The surrender at Yorktown was this momentous turning point in 1781, sure, but the war didn't officially conclude until the Treaty of Paris 2 whole years later.
Section 3. Sourcing historical evidence. The C3 framework calls our next process the inquiry arc. What this means is that to do real history, we have to start by developing our questions and applying disciplinary concepts. Then we intensely gather and evaluate sources before we can use that evidence to build any sort of justifiable understanding. It's all about using hard data to separate historical opinions from evidence-based claims.
When we talk about historical evidence, we mean the materials left from the past, things like letters, treaties, or objects that we use to support a claim. But you have to remember this one crucial detail. Useful evidence always reflects a perspective. There is literally no such thing as a completely neutral document. Someone created it, and they created it for a reason.
So, to source a document effectively, we have to rigorously apply a specific set of criteria. First, who is the creator? Next, what is the date? And a quick rule here. We only claim a date if it's explicitly shown or we can firmly corroborate it. Then we ask, who is the intended audience? What is the purpose of the document? And finally, what is its limitation? Limitations are huge because, as we just established, all evidence reflects a specific viewpoint.
Section 4. Comparing wartime experiences.
Historical records from the National Park Service make it very clear that the revolution was definitely not a unified march to freedom. It actually divided citizens into fiercely opposed factions. You had patriots, also known as Whigs, actively opposing loyalists, who were known as Tories. When we source documents from both sides, we suddenly see 2 entirely different visions for the future of North America, held by people living right next door to each other.
We can see this stark contrast in military experiences, too. Visual sources reveal the incredibly harsh realities faced by American troops. We're talking about soldiers literally freezing in log huts at Valley Forge during the winter of 1777. Meanwhile, the British Army was occupying Philadelphia at that exact same time, enjoying warm homes and throwing social balls. It's 2 completely different pictures of wartime survival.
But what happens when our sources totally disagree? Consider this classic historian's dilemma highlighted by the C3 framework. When reading accounts by a British soldier and a contradictory one by a colonial Minuteman concerning who was at fault during a bloody skirmish, it becomes difficult to determine which is which without corroborating evidence.
We can't just flip a coin or say one guy is lying. We have to do the work and cross-check the facts.
And here is exactly how we cross-check as historians, using a two-source matrix. First up, we find the agreement. In this case, both sources confirm an armed skirmish actually occurred. Great. Then we isolate the difference. The British soldier blames the colonists, while the Minuteman blames the British. Finally, we determine the needed additional evidence to solve the puzzle. That might be something like a neutral witness account or some secondary physical evidence from the site.
Section 5. 2 knowledge checks.
All right, let's put those historical detective skills to the test with 2 quick checks. For the first one, think back to our timeline earlier. Which piece of evidence best supports a turning point claim regarding a change in military alliances? Was it the first shots in 1775? The declaration in 1776? Take a second to really think about what event caused international powers to finally take notice.
If you thought of Saratoga, spot on. The 1777 Battle of Saratoga and the subsequent 1778 French Treaty provide the strongest evidence because they directly secured international resources and alliances. Basically, France saw that the colonists could win a major battle, and that completely transformed the war by locking in crucial foreign support.
Okay, second check. Let's look at sourcing. Why is identifying the intended audience of a primary document crucial for identifying its limitations? Consider how the person reading a document might influence what the author decides to write down in the very first place.
It basically comes down to human nature. A creator's intended audience acts as a limitation. A creator might, consciously or unconsciously, alter, exaggerate, or omit facts just to persuade or please the people they are writing for. Think about it. An official account written to the King of England is going to sound vastly different from a private diary entry written by a freezing soldier, even if they're describing the exact same day. Section 6. Review and final question.
Let's lock in everything we've covered today with a strict 3-sentence recap. A turning point does not end a conflict immediately. Instead, it shifts to strategy, alliances, resources, or political purpose. By examining source-supported facts, we see that wartime experiences vary drastically between groups like patriots and loyalists. Useful evidence always reflects a perspective, requiring historians to source and corroborate documents carefully.
You are now fully equipped with the analytical tools of a historian, so I want to leave you with one final, critical question to chew on. How would you test a new claim about the Revolutionary War before repeating it in a presentation? Remember to use the inquiry arc, corroborate your sources, and always check for perspective. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking great historical questions.